You know, there's this thing, the lectionary, where someone, I don't even know who, got together, organized scriptures in the Bible according to various weeks. So in every particular week, there's certain scriptures that are assigned to that particular Sunday. I sort of blame it on the Episcopalians, but I really don't know if it's their fault or not. And you know, when we look at the Sunday service, we have to kind of decide, are we going to use the lectionary for that moment? And I have mixed feelings about it. You know, sometimes it feels like a good thing to do, but I'm not sure it's always the thing. And I was looking at the scriptures for this week, and I'm afraid that Zephaniah just reached out and grabbed me, somewhat against my will. Because, like Zephaniah, who's even heard of that book of the Bible? One of the lesser prophets, somewhere along with all those other strings of lesser prophets. And you know how the prophets are. They were not happy people, I think, in general. Or at least they felt called to call other people to righteousness. And I can just kind of imagine the situations that they were in, that they were promoting a way of looking at the divine, looking at God that was a little bit different from the time. There was probably a lot of competing interests, not just theological, but secular as well. Does that sound familiar to our time at all? Maybe. Maybe this is also a time where we need people who are willing to go out into the crowded market and stand up on a soapbox and just let it rip. So this is what Zephaniah has to say. And I'm just going to be reading parts of the first chapter. Be silent before God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. The Lord has prepared a sacrifice. God has consecrated all the guests. At that time, I will search Jerusalem with a lamp, and I will punish the people who rest complacently on their dregs. Watch out if you are resting complacently on your dregs. Those who say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good, nor will God do harm. Their wealth shall be plundered, and their houses laid waste. Though they build houses, they shall not inhabit them. Though they plant vineyards, they shall not drink wine from them. The great day of the Lord is near and hastening fast. The sound of the day of the Lord is bitter. The warrior cries aloud there. Neither their gold nor their silver will be able to save them on the day of the Lord's wrath. In the fire of God's passion, the whole earth shall be consumed. For a full and terrible end, God will make of all the inhabitants of the world. It's pretty dramatic and pretty pointed, I think. And one of the reasons that it reached out and grabbed me, even though a couple of weeks ago I was preaching on issues about the economy and economic justice and pledging and all of that stuff, here again was a scripture that was calling me at least, to look at these economic issues. And I thought, I don't really want to do that again, because I find at the moment that the theological part of it, the spiritual part of it, for me personally, all this stuff about wealth and the 1% and what that means for all of us and our souls, is very easily slipping into the political realm. And what does it mean when we bring the political realm into our religious conversations? Actually, even in this congregation of quite active people, we don't have kind of an ongoing practice of looking at the political landscape and weaving that in with our faith point of view. But I think as Christians, we can't help but be faced with the issues of money and economic justice. How can we be part of this tradition, whether we hold tightly to the part of the tradition that comes from the Hebrew Scriptures, or if we look at a slightly different point of view from the New Testament, but still, the messages throughout are calling us to look at the way we live in economies and what that means for our spirits. And it seems at the moment, for me at least, that things are not in balance Now, I'm not really anti-capitalist, I don't think. Although maybe if you pushed me hard enough, or I got enough education, I might. I tend to be more of a reformer sort of person rather than a person who is talking about dismantling, and there's some talk in the Occupy movement about dismantling the system. There always is. When we bump up against the system, we're going to tear it down, and we're going to build something new. That's not always been my approach. But still, I feel like things are out of balance. And that one of the places they're out of balance is that we haven't found ways to really lift up a kind of comparison between capital, as we might talk about it just in terms of wealth and resources, and what we might refer to as social capital or spiritual capital. And I recognize even in that moment, I'm using the kind of capitalism frame to talk about issues that spill out beyond economic systems, which for me makes sense. I think as progressive Christians, one of the things we choose to do is to live in the world, right in the middle of the world, to try to make sense of the world. We don't pull away from that. We don't sequester ourselves and create our own little places. We are out living in the world, and it seems to me we also have an obligation both to comment on what is happening and perhaps suggest ways that we might look at it differently. So at the very least, without dipping into the politics of whether you think capitalism is a good thing or a bad thing, or whether you think that particular policies, economic policies are good or bad from either a political or a spiritual point of view, I'd like to suggest that at least on a basic level, we might all agree that there might be a relationship between capital, when we talk about wealth, about social capital, and about spiritual capital. And I think one of the things I'm concerned about in terms of balance in the world is that it feels like there are places where there is no room for the conversation about social or spiritual capital. I feel like there are places almost by obligation. If you think about the idea of fiduciary responsibility, that thing where like a board of directors is really responsible for holding the economic interests of their shareholders, that's their job. So it's not their job to say, well, you know, we could do this, which might not be as profitable, but it might be good for the larger picture. That seems problematic to me at a very basic level. What are the systems that are in place that create no room for social or spiritual capital? And I think about what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've been in the middle of this incredible Mission 1 campaign, and Nick is going to report a little bit later, but I've been watching the little tote board on the UCC website, and it's incredible what's been done, what's been collected by the United Church of Christ over a period of time. This seems like an act that lives in the realm of economic capital, social capital, and spiritual capital. Isn't that what we're about? And I think about the pick-up parties. You know, last week I watched people that was like, I can't wait to get in the door to sign up for the party. And mine did really well, by the way. I had a long waiting list. That felt good. But just think about that. Here's a way that, you know, people are donating their time and effort and resources to create these social events, their social capital. We're doing it on behalf of this institution that we believe in, that feeds our spirit, that spiritual capital, and it's also a financial thing as well. How good is that we have found these ways to work those things together? And pledging, you know, where we say, we are committed. We are committed. So regardless of how you might take the biblical message about, like, I have to say, if I were really following the biblical message, I would be divesting even more of what I had than I am personally. I would be living even more simply than I am today. I'm not, I don't think we're quite at that place in our conversation. But I believe that we have demonstrated in a way over the past few weeks our commitment to find balance between capital, social capital, spiritual capital. And that feels to me like what we are supposed to do. Again, how this weaves into the political realm is an interesting challenge. I find myself, I continue to be fascinated by the Occupy movement, even in the face of the challenges that Occupy Oakland is experiencing. And some of you may know that Rita Nakashima-Braca is supposed to do the Learning Hour, and we learned just in the last couple of days that there might be another attempt to move people out of the camp, and she was planning to be there. So we don't know, even at this moment, exactly what is happening. We've heard some little bits, but Rita may or may not be here this morning because that's where she is. And to be part of this march down to the port, a march that I wasn't really planning to take part in. Again, I just find that here's a group of people who are suggesting, I think, precisely the sorts of values that we're suggesting, that to look at it from only an economic point of view is insufficient, that we have to look at the common good, that we have to look at the way our structures affect our spirits. What does it mean if something works well financially, but it kills our souls? I think that's what we're about. And because we do live in the world as progressive Christians, we have a place in this conversation to be able to say, at the very least, we think things are out of balance. We think that besides the kind of the economic situation, we need to be paying attention to the social situation, the way that we work together as community, and the way we look at our spirits. What gives life? And what takes it away? What gives life to the most people? What takes it away? Now, I don't know if the God of Zephaniah coming through with the lamp, how that God would judge us, would judge me. I don't know. But I do know that personally, and I think it's true, I can speak for many of you, that we are looking for that balance. We are saying, alongside this way, this place we live, is another way to live as well. And we want to lift up those values, the values of the common good, the values of creating balance between our financial, our root needs, and some of the other deeper needs that are harder to quantify, harder to express. I think this is what we're about. I think this is our path. I think it's incredibly challenging, but full of possibilities. And that we can be in this time where there is a great deal of economic challenge with a sense of hope, with a sense of possibility, with a sense of something new breaking open. Amen.